So today we're going to study converting Canadian to US currency, and then we're also going to go backwards and convert US to Canadian based on a certain conversion factor. Now, what you need to realize is that when we're talking about the United States and Canada, United States and Canada share the largest border in the world. And in this case, we also notice that Canada and the US are the largest trading partners that they have in the world because they're very, very close to each other, right? And so thousands of Canadians enter the US every day, right? Now, the largest, let's call it bridge that moves money back and forth or products back and forth in Canada is called and we know that it's called the Ambassador Bridge. We heard about that in the news a while back, and we knew that when the bridge had shut down, millions upon millions of dollars that was being made between America and Canada was stopped. And the flow of people from the US to Canada and Canada to US was stopped. So basically people couldn't spend money back and forth across the border. Now, today we're going to talk about this thing called a conversion factor, right? The conversion factor changes daily, right? And as of April 22, $1 Canadian was 0.7895 cents US. That means that for every $1 that we have here, Canadian, it's just under 80 cents US. So if you forget this calculation here, make sure that you remember that when you have 80 cents US, we can write that as 0.80 in our calculations in order to change them. All right. Now let's go and do the first example of the day. All right. So the first example of the day asks us to change to take this item that sells for $24.99 in Canada and turn it into US currency. And in order to do that, all we're going to do is we're going to take the Canadian. We're literally going to take the Canadian dollars and we're going to times it by 0.7895. So just remember that. Okay, so when we're using it, we always use the $1 to Canadian is equal to about 0.7895 US. Okay, so when we go and convert this into US currency, what that really means is this. We're going to take $24.99 and then we're going to times that by 0.7895. And that tells us that our final answer is $19.729. Now, remember, we only need to have up to 2 decimal places. So because we have this 9 after the 7.2, we're going to write our final answer to be $19.80 as our final answer. And we're done. Now, let's move on to the next concept, yeah? Example 2. Imagine you have an item that's for sale, right? And this item is a hoodie, okay? And we're selling it in Toronto for $60, okay? All right. Now, imagine how much would a U.S. tourist pay if they paid for it in U.S. currency? And the store was offering an exchange rate. So imagine you're in Toronto and you say, hey, not only will we take Canadian money, but we'll also take in American money, right? So imagine if they gave you a fair exchange rate of this, right? Usually when Canadian businesses do this, they go and set it up so that they make more money. So what they would do is they would take this 0.785 and maybe say give you 75 cents for every US dollar, at which point you would get more money Canadian if you converted it back. So remember, when we do this, when we go and convert this $60 shirt, we have to take the Canadian money and we're going to times it by 0.7895. All right. Now that we do that, all we end up doing is, all right, so now the new cost is going to be $60. We're going to times that by 0.7895. And we get this. 43.47 exactly. So we would say, in this problem, we would say, therefore, the cost in US is $43.47. And we're done. That's it. Now, the last step that we have to do is look at how we go and convert from US to American. And that's the last concept of the day that I'm going to give you your work problems. All right, so now we got to convert from US to Canadian. So the exchange rate is usually expressed in Canada. So that $1 equals a certain value in the States. So remember, our amount was 0.7895 US was equal to $1 Canadian. Okay. Now, in order to use this number, 0.7895 US, and convert it, we literally have to do this. So in order to change 1 US into Canadian, what we have to do is take 1 divided by the value of US currency in Canada, which is our 0.7895, right? And we go 1 divided by 0.7895 gives us approximately 1.266 Canadian dollars. Now, this means that for every one US dollar, we have, it costs about $1.267 Canadian. All right. So the first example that we have is this. Imagine that you have an item which sells for $17.97 US and costs, and we need to know how much it costs in Canadian currency, right? So the moment I tell you that it costs $0.7895 US for 1 Canadian dollar, you have to use that conversion thing that we had here. So we got to take that US divided by 1.1 divided by 0.7895 to get the Canadian equivalent, and then we use it in our calculations, right? You can either use that or you're just going to go and put 0.1267 US as your calculation. Now, let's begin. Now, remember, I always give you the fact that I've got $1 is 0.7895 US. So to turn it into US, we divide that thing and we end up with approximately 1.267 Canadian dollars. So now let's go and figure out the Canadian price. So the Canadian price is going to be this. We're going to take 17.97, and then what we're going to do is we're literally just going to times it by our 1.267, and we end up with this answer, with 22.767. Now you got to remember, anytime I have like a really long decimal, I'm only doing up to 3 spots, and then I'm going to look at the last 2 to make sure our rounding is right, and we say, okay, is it going to be 76 or 77? And in this case, your final answer is $22.77 Canadian. So you would say your final price is that. So that's it for your work today. Problems are posted online. Good luck. So just as a final reminder, remember, when we want US funded, we want to basically take the Canadian price and we're going to times it by 1.267. Or we go through this step if you don't have it, if you don't have the number. Okay? All right. Good luck.